What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. You guys already know what it is. It's draft season all year long, and today we have a full first round mock draft here for the 2023 NFL draft. Now, if you guys are interested in anything related to the NFL draft, this is definitely going to be the channel for you. So consider subscribing. We are on the road to 400 subscribers. Now, the Chicago Bears are currently on the clock. They own the number 1 overall pick. An absolute miracle for them. And they have the ability to take the best player available or potentially a quarterback. There are rumors about that. So what we're going to do here, though, is I like Justin Fields. I think he needs a little bit more time to progress and develop. He also needs a little bit more talent around him. So we're just going to build the rest of this team and not worry about the quarterback position. The best player available right now, in my opinion, is Will Anderson. I understand that Jalen Carter is a more rare prospect because of his ability to rush the passer from the inside and also be a consistent run stopper. But history has shown that the edge rusher position is a very popular one in the top 5 of the NFL draft. You look at picks like Travon Walker in last year's draft. Aiden Hutchinson went right after him. You also see guys like Nick Bosa go really early in his draft, Myles Garrett. So I'm going to stick with that. I just think that it is a tendency for NFL teams to go with that edge rusher. And I understand Jalen Carter is a prospect like we've never seen before in the NFL draft, but I'm going to go with Will Anderson for now. It's still very, very early in the draft process. We're going to hear more news come out as the time goes by, but I'm going to go with Will Anderson for now. Would have no complaints taking Jalen Carter here, number 1 overall. Now, for the Houston Texans, the number 1 goal right now is to just get out of this draft with a franchise quarterback. Davis Mills certainly isn't the answer. We're going to go back-to-back Alabama players here to start off this draft. We're going to go with Bryce Young. And look, he's a superstar, man. I mean, no moment is too big for him, and he is at his best when it is required. I think this Alabama team on offense just took a step down. Their offensive line wasn't very great. Their wide receivers couldn't get a lot of separation this year, but he still made the most of what he had. And this team wasn't up to the Alabama standard, but they were good nonetheless. And I think the reason for that is because of Bryce Young. I mean, he seriously is an X factor, and he is a franchise quarterback, the one that the Houston Texans are desperately looking for. This is going to be a home run of a pick if they take him here. I understand there are some concerns about him being 5'11", and you want your quarterback to be a little taller than that, but he has shown last year and this year that he's a really good football player, and that's what you want to get at the end of the day out of the NFL draft. Now, for the Arizona Cardinals, great situation to be in here. You're going to take Jalen Carter here. You're not even going to think about it. This is arguably the best prospect in the entire draft. This is a guy who's going to be an absolute brick wall in the middle of your defense, who's going to help you stop the run, create horrible third down situations for the opposing offense, and he can even create pressure through the passing game, very disruptive, and get right in the face of the opposing quarterback. So Jalen Carter, phenomenal interior defensive line prospect, and I don't know if we've ever seen someone like this coming out of the draft. So very, very interesting prospect. And again, wouldn't be surprised if I see him go number 1 overall in this year's draft. Now, another team in the AFC South who desperately needs a franchise quarterback. Here are the Indianapolis Colts right here. We're going to go with C.J. Stroud out of Ohio State. I think he really helped his draft stock out in the semifinal game against Georgia because not many teams have been able to dismantle Georgia's defense like they did on that night. And they were operating on a different level. Him and Marvin Harrison Jr., who is going to be a good prospect on his own when he comes out in the NFL draft a few years from now. But C.J. Stroud, absolute dog. And we've seen now that he can be the mobile quarterback, the dual threat that many people believe that he could be. I mean, he was using his legs like crazy, like we haven't seen before. Just playing very efficient football against a very good unit in the college level. I'm really excited to see what C.J. Stroud does. It is a very close 1A, 1B between him and Bryce Young for me heading into this draft. But, yeah, I mean, just very accurate passer. He's got a good arm. And, again, has that mobility, has the ability to make plays on his legs. And for the Indianapolis Colts, right, they've gone through this repeated cycle of getting this washed veteran quarterback that isn't very good. So, it's time for a change. They need to get their franchise guy in the building, someone who's going to give them stability at the quarterback position for the next 5, 10, 20 years. It's going to help the entire franchise as a whole to just have some continuity at the quarterback position, which is the most important in football at the end of the day. Now, for the Seattle Seahawks, they are in a fantastic situation here with the number 5 overall pick. This is Denver's pick, the one that they made the trade in, involving Russell Wilson. That has definitely worked out for the Seattle Seahawks, considering how their picks went in 2022 and how the picks are set up for them in 2023. Now, we're not going to take too much time on this one either. We're going to go with Bryan Bresee here out of Clemson. This is a guy who is the second overall player, a consensus second overall player in most cases for the interior defensive line group. And this is a guy who's about 300 pounds. So you got a big body now in the middle if you're the Seattle Seahawks, who's going to help you stop the run, which has, been the biggest issue for this entire team as a whole. I think, you look at this offense, you look at the defense, this is the biggest issue all around for this team, is their ability to stop the run. So having a body in the middle like Bryan Bresee is definitely going to help stop the bleeding a little bit in terms of the run game. But what a home run of a trade so far it has been for the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, to have the number 5 overall pick after trading away what everyone thought was, the only reason why you guys were competitive. You make the playoffs. You have a top 5 pick now. Fantastic situation to be in. And Bryan Bresee is going to shore up that big issue of stopping the run there in Seattle. Now, for the Detroit Lions, this is tough because, we've taken a lot of guys at the top of the board, and that's something that I truly believe in taking the best player available. But you take a look here, tackle, edge, wide receiver, those are really not priorities here for the Detroit Lions, and they're sitting in a fantastic situation too. A team that is definitely trending in the right direction, finished this year with a winning record, and here are the Rams, who should have a top 10 pick, but it's with the Lions now. So fantastic job by Brad Holmes and their staff for acquiring this pick. And what we're going to do here is take who I believe is the number 1 corner in this year's draft in Cam Smith out of South Carolina. Now, this is a team that's going to have a lot of free agents in terms of the cornerback position. So I think that this is a position that they're definitely going to target in free agency or the draft. Only time will tell. But Cam Smith, I think, is someone that I'd feel safe taking here in the top 10 in the NFL draft. What I like about him is he's got an attitude, he's got a swagger to him. He plays with a lot of confidence, does a great job of tracking the ball in the air, and he's got a ton of makeup speed. He's very fluid in the hips. He's a fast built guy. So I think Cam Smith is the best overall prospect in terms of the cornerback position. It fills a need, and I don't think it's a reach at all to take him here at number 6 overall. I know it's not a very popular opinion in Cam Smith being the number 1 cornerback in this draft, but, I really like all the attributes to him that he brings to his game. So there it is. Detroit Lions taking a cornerback here, number 6 overall. With the number 7 overall pick now, we're going to go ahead and take Will Levis. I think Derek Carr's time with the Las Vegas Raiders is done. I think he felt completely disrespected when he got benched, even though I think it was deserved. He really was not playing good at all. And then Jarrett Stidham comes in the next week and absolutely balls out. We're not going to talk about the week after that, but he just wasn't playing at a very good level. So what I think is going to happen here, they're going to take Will Levis. This is definitely a guy where you're going to have to see what he looks like 2-3 years down the road. It's not going to be fair to evaluate him off of his rookie year because he is really a raw prospect, a guy with a ton of talent, has an absolute cannon of an arm. There are already comparisons being made to him that he's like the next Josh Allen, and, that's very lofty expectations to try and match, but it is possible. You're either going to look like a complete genius taking him here at 7, or you're going to look like a complete idiot. But you want some type of hope for the future, and this is going to be it for the Las Vegas Raiders because the Derek Carr era, I believe, is officially over. But there is a lot to like about Will Levis. He does need to clean up his turnovers and some of his decision-making, but in terms of just raw talent, if you develop this guy in the right way, this could be a huge investment for the Las Vegas Raiders in the long run. Now, for the Atlanta Falcons, what we're going to do here, and if you guys see me look down, it's because I made these picks earlier. I didn't want to do it on the fly and absolutely botch your team's picks. And if you think I botched it anyway, then I apologize. But we're going to go ahead here and take Myles Murphy out of Clemson. This is a lot of people's number 2 overall edge rusher in this year's class. He's not mine personally, but this is a player out of Clemson who is going to provide a lot of speed off of the edge. And for the Atlanta Falcons, my goodness, one of the worst pass rushes in the last 2 years, and it's not even close. It's hard to name who is at their edge spots right now. So having a guy like Myles Murphy to just put a little bit of pressure in the face of the quarterback is going to help out their defense tremendously. They've already got a pretty solid secondary, in my opinion, but this would just make things a whole lot better for this team. And aside from Grady Jarrett, I mean, the whole defensive line is just not very talented at all. So this will definitely help with that. But like I said, this is a guy who's very quick off the edge, one of the more athletic edge rushers here in this year's draft. But Myles Murphy, Atlanta Falcons, I think this is a great match. Best player available, fills a need. There you have it. And for the Carolina Panthers here with the number 9 overall pick. Now, what I think they're going to go ahead and do here is also take an edge rusher, and they're going to go Tyree Wilson here from Texas Tech. Now, if you haven't seen Tyree Wilson play this year in 2022, the first thing you're going to notice is that this is a massive dude, okay? This dude stands at 6'6", around 250, 260 pounds, plays both on the inside and outside, so a very versatile player with a ton of size. I mean, you don't see many guys that tall playing that position, but not unorthodox at all. He's a very good prospect, and he can win with both strength and speed. But just knowing that he has the versatility to play both inside and outside, which we've seen some teams do in recent memory. I mean, you have guys like, I watch Vikings football. Zadarius Smith, you can see him playing over a guard a lot. Tyree Wilson plays a similar role in Texas Tech, and I wouldn't be surprised if a team like the Panthers would do the same thing with him. But pair him up with Brian Burns, and you also have Derek Brown, who's a monster on the inside. This is going to be a very, very scary defensive line to go up against, and one with a lot of size and a lot of athleticism. So back-to-back edge rushers here in the NFC South. I really like Tyree Wilson as a prospect coming out of Texas Tech. For the Philadelphia Eagles, what we're going to go ahead and do right here is take Kelee Ringo. Now, again, this is another team who absolutely finessed another team in the New Orleans Saints. They're sitting here with the number 10 overall pick and have a very good shot at winning the entire thing this year. So what a tremendous spot to be in here for the Philadelphia Eagles. They have an opportunity to start a dynasty. But I'm going to take Kelee Ringo here. Now, Kelee Ringo is a guy who has flashes, but there are parts of his game that you'd like to see him improve in. I just don't think that he has a ton of makeup speed. Like, once he gets beat, he's chasing the rest of the way. I mean, he doesn't really catch up with the receivers. Now, the plus side to him is that he's a very big cornerback. So I don't know if you guys watched the national championship game yesterday, because it was very ugly, but you saw him go up against another really good prospect in Quentin Johnson, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, and he just bodied him at the line of scrimmage, and it really made things difficult for Quentin Johnson to get off the line of scrimmage and continue his route. So that is the upside that you have with Kelee Ringo. And for the Philadelphia Eagles, they tend to go for bigger sized cornerbacks. You have Darius Slay at about 190 pounds. You have James Bradbury about sub 200. So Kelee Ringo's in that same range. You want to see him improve in certain parts of his game, but like I said, there are flashes here and there where he'll force a turnover, make a good play, and create an opportunity for his defense. But I'm still up in the air about him a little bit, but I think that he'll go here to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, speaking of Quentin Johnston, I think this is a perfect match here. I know they went on and got Treylon Burks in the first round last year, but I still think they need more wide receiver help. You cannot have Robert Woods and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine as your number 2 and 3 wide receivers, even if you're a run-first football team. It's really going to help to have this guy on your team. This guy's standing at about 6'4". I think he's going to run about a 4.4 at the NFL Combine, and shockingly, his best attribute is his run after the catch. I mean, a dude with that size to put on the moves that he has, I mean, he just has this shiftiness and this savviness to him that a lot of guys his size don't really possess. And for the Tennessee Titans, they like to go for the more physically built wide receivers. You saw it with A.J. Brown. You saw it with Treylon Burks. You saw them go after Julio Jones. They like these bigger physical receivers. That's exactly what Quentin Johnson is. Now, as I mentioned before, Kelee Ringo really messed him up at the line of scrimmage, so that's one thing that you really want to see him improve from his game. He has the ability to make contested catches, and they didn't really do a ton of that at TCU, considering how big he is, so I would imagine that Tennessee will be giving him a lot more of those opportunities. So Quentin Johnson, wouldn't be shocked if he's the first wide receiver taken off of the board. The second wide receiver taken off of the board here in my mock draft is going to be Jackson Smith-Njigba here for the Houston Texans. Now, after Brandon Cooks leaves this season, because it's very clear that he doesn't want to be there, he got his captain badge taken away. They need wide receiver help, and if Bryce Young has no one to throw to, it's really going to stunt his development there in year one. They have some promising players like Nico Collins in that room already, and hopefully John Mechie comes back because he's going through leukemia right now. But if you have all of those guys healthy and all of those guys playing at the field at the same time, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think out of that group is going to be the X factor. This is a guy who predominantly plays in the slot, but I think he has the ability to play on the outside. Look, we made this mistake once with Justin Jefferson. We said, oh, this is a guy who played 99% of his snaps from the slot. We want that X receiver on the outside to rely on. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba, I'm not saying he's going to be Justin Jefferson, but he has that ability. I mean, the ability to take over an entire game just purely off of how dominant they are. I know some teams are concerned about his lack in athleticism. He's not the quickest guy, but I mean, dude, you don't go for like 350 yards and like 3 or 4 touchdowns in the Rose Bowl on accident, right? This is definitely a difference maker, and I think this would be a great pick for the Houston Texans, who got this pick through the Deshaun Watson trade, and that's not really working out for the Cleveland Browns right now. We got to give that one a little bit more time. Okay, now here for the New York Jets, what I'm going to go ahead and do right here is take the best tackle on PFF's board at least. I'm going to be honest, I'm not very confident about who is the best tackle in this year's draft. Like, I know a lot of people are saying Paris Johnson, but I think he's had his ups and downs throughout this season. So we're going to go with Peter Skoronski here. The big hit on him right now is that, he has shorter arms, less than ideal for a tackle, but he has the production there. So we're going to go with him. Again, still very early on in the draft process. It's kind of a toss-up between some of these prospects, but we're going to go with Peter Skoronski here. Look, the thing is that it doesn't matter who they take right now, but we know that they're going to be addressing the tackle position, or at least I think they should be, because they've kind of had this rotation recently, and I think at the end of this season they had Mike Remmers and was it George Fant? I'm not really positive who was on the other side, but I know it's 2 veteran players at those tackle positions, but they just need a guy to be able to just hold that position for the next 5 years. I think Peter Skoronski can definitely be that player there for the New York Jets, and hopefully Mekhi Becton can get himself healthy as well, but they just need to go out there and protect whoever's playing quarterback for them. I know that they would probably like to snag a quarterback in this year's draft, just considering that Zach Wilson's probably not going to be there. Joe Flacco's getting old. Mike White is inconsistent. He's not always healthy. It's kind of a disaster at that quarterback position right now, but the least you can do is keep him protected. That's what you're going to do here at Peter Skoronski. And speaking of tackles, I mean, look at what we've done right here, right? Back-to-back edge rushers, back-to-back wide receivers. What we're going to do here is take back-to-back tackles. Now, Isaiah Wynn, Trent Brown, not the greatest this year. Really not the greatest. And I know that a lot of Patriots fans are disgruntled with the way that those two have played. And some of them, I believe Isaiah Wynn, at least, is a pending free agent. So we're going to go ahead here and take another tackle. We're going to take Paris Johnson, who we just mentioned. Look, I understand that there's a little bit of inconsistency, but this is a guy who's a solid 315 pounds. He is one of the better offensive tackle, if not the best offensive tackle prospect in this year's draft. I still have to formulate my opinion on that, but they need the tackle position desperately. I mean, they've just had poor play at both ends, the left and the right tackle for the New England Patriots. They got to have a guy to keep Mac Jones upright, and hopefully they can have a competent play caller here in 2023, because Matt Patricia was certainly not it. But Paris Johnson will help out a lot of those issues there for the Patriots. Here at number 15 overall. Now, the Green Bay Packers should take a wide receiver. Are they? No, they're not going to do that. They're going to take a tight end, though. They're going to take Michael Mayer. So Robert Tonyan is a guy who's going to be a free agent this year. I can't imagine they'll bring him back. Mercedes Lewis is also going to be a free agent. And, considering that he's, 38, 39 years old already, I don't think they're going to bring him back either. He's primarily a blocker for them. Michael Mayer is just a younger, cheaper option that they can go with, and I think he'll play just as efficiently as either of those guys would. Just a very good pass catcher, and again, has that ability to block as well, which you want to see out of your tight end. So I don't think that they're necessarily going to go with a receiver, a wide receiver in terms of a receiving option. Oh my God, fumbling my words. But I think they will go with the tight end here. Michael Mayer here out of Notre Dame. I just think it makes a ton of sense. For the Washington Commanders, now I do have to look back at this. Okay, so this is a position that they desperately need, in my opinion. What we're going to do here is take Jalen Jones. Now, what I like about Jalen Jones is that this is a guy who makes a quick break on the football. I mean, I think he excels most when he drops back into coverage, and then the quarterback makes a throw, and he just sees the quarterback look that way, turn that direction, and he's already making a break for it and swatting the ball away. He's also a pretty good tackler, in my opinion, and this is a team that I think needs to just shore up that cornerback position a little bit more. Benjamin St-Juste is a guy with a lot of size, but I don't think he is, up there in terms of the cornerbacks. Kendall Fuller is pretty good as well, but he also is getting up there in age. They also traded away a cornerback, William Jackson, at the trade deadline, so this is sort of the replacement here. But again, another team that could potentially use a quarterback. I just don't think there's anyone worth taking here at number 16, so they're going to go with Jalen Jones, the cornerback out of Texas A&M. For the Pittsburgh Steelers here now, this is also another team that desperately needs a cornerback, but I don't think they're going to go that route here. I think you need to make an emphasis on protecting the franchise. We're going to go over here and take Broderick Jones. Broderick Jones, the first thing that stands out to me, okay, this isn't really relevant, but he's number 59. I don't know if I've ever seen a number 59 offensive lineman before, so I think that's really interesting. But this is another dude with a lot of size. He's a very athletic tackle, part of this Georgia National Championship team, keeping Stetson Bennett clean in the pocket. But we need him to do the same here for Kenny Pickett and the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have just had, very mid offensive lineman play as a whole, right? And you need to protect the franchise. I mean, we can't have a Joe Burrow on him where he absolutely just gets beat up in the pocket in his first few years. You want to keep your guy healthy and help him progress throughout the years, and it starts here in the trenches with the offensive line. They're also going to go a tackle here. There's going to be a lot of teams in the draft in the first round that are going to be desperate for a tackle or a cornerback. That's just what I'm getting here out of this year's draft. Now next, we're going to go with the Detroit Lions. Now this is a guy who's not very high on PFF's board, but I think that this pick makes a ton of sense considering who else is on the board at the moment. We're going to go with Trenton Simpson here out of Clemson. This is a position that they desperately need. I mean, Alex Anzalone, you could consider him your one. Maybe you think it's Malcolm Rodriguez. Either way, they just need that commander in the middle to just set the tone on the defense. I mean, they already have a lot of tone setters on the defense, but having a linebacker would really take this defense to the next level. Trenton Simpson was a big-time player at Clemson, a leader on the defensive side of the ball, and I think this is a guy who you plug in and play day one. He's going to be efficient. Man, I mean, as a Vikings fan, I'm really getting scared about the Lions because, they've been picking very high in recent drafts, and they've just slowly accumulated their talent, and they're starting to get good now, and Trenton Simpson would just add on to that culture that they're building here in Detroit. Now, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, huge question mark. It doesn't seem like Tom Brady is going to be coming back and playing for the Buccaneers in 2023. Again, I don't think that there's a quarterback worth taking here at this spot in the draft. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take another cornerback. Like I said, tackles and cornerbacks are going to be in high demand here in the first round of this draft. And I'm going to go with Christian Gonzalez right here out of Oregon. Now, I know some people have Christian Gonzalez a lot higher. I have him going here. I'm not super high on Gonzalez, but this is another team like the Eagles who like to get in bigger cornerbacks that can play physical at the line of scrimmage. Is a team that likes to play a lot of man-to-man press coverage. Christian Gonzalez can definitely do that considering the size that he has. He is also around 200 pounds like Kelee Ringo, and I think has a little bit more athleticism than Ringo. So very interesting to see where he'll go in the draft. This is a guy who could shock everyone and be the first cornerback taken off the board, but he can also be found here in the middle of the round. I don't know. Just still a lot of question marks. We still have a lot of time to go in the NFL draft, but Christian Gonzalez here to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers I feel like makes a lot of sense because you also have a handful of your cornerbacks for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as pending free agents heading into this offseason. I can't imagine they'd retain all of them. So I think this is definitely going to be a position that they look to address here in the offseason. Now, for the Seattle Seahawks, this is their second pick in the first round. And what we're going to do here is we're going to actually bolster up this defensive line. Again, we went with Brian Brzee the first time around. And we're going to go ahead and take Jared Verse out of Florida State. Now, Jared Verse, I think he fits the mold of what they look for at the edge rusher position. I just tried to take a look at the measurables of the guys that they have currently on their roster, and he kind of fits that mold where he's a guy standing at about 6'3", 6'4", 250 pounds. He has that athleticism to him, so he has the ability to set the edge with his strength and his speed. Just a very versatile player, like we mentioned before with Tyree Wilson. This is a very deep edge rusher class, but they really need to help out this defensive side of the ball. The offense, I'm not too worried about in terms of the talent on that side, but this defensive line could use some help. I think Jared Verse could be the better edge rusher out of the two between him and Uchenna Nwosu, so that is definitely going to be a huge help for this team. And then, like we mentioned before, Bryan Bresee is going to help with the inside. Jared Verse will help setting the edge on the outside. I would be very optimistic if you could leave this draft with two solid defensive linemen. Here for the Jacksonville Jaguars, here's the number 21 overall pick. Again, guys, I did do this draft before I recorded, and now I am just recording it for you guys. So if I'm looking down, it's just to see who I picked and make sure I'm taking the right players. But if you guys like what you're hearing right now and like what you're seeing, consider subscribing. Like I said before, on the road to 400 subscribers. So I would be very appreciative if you guys could help me out with that. Now, for the Jacksonville Jaguars, completely blanked out right there for a second. We're going to go ahead and take Devin Witherspoon. Now, I know some of you guys are like, what? How are you taking Devin Witherspoon before Joey Porter and Clark Phillips? Now, this is where my opinion and my bias comes in to twist up this mock draft a little bit, because I think Devin Witherspoon is the second best corner in this year's draft. Now, what people are concerned about with him is that he's a little undersized at about 180 pounds, but the Jaguars have not been shy about taking those lighter, more athletic, speedier cornerbacks. Most of their guys, actually, as a matter of fact, in the quarterback position, are around 170 to 180 pounds. A lot of these guys are like 5'9", 5'10", so they don't mind taking a smaller guy if it means that they're going to get some production out of it. And Tyson Campbell is a great example of that. They also have Darius Williams on the team, so they're not afraid to go after the smaller player, and that is what some people view Devin Witherspoon as. But this dude was very good at Illinois. I mean, this was the best defensive player on their team without a doubt. This is a guy who shadowed every opposing team's number one wide receiver and did not disappoint week after week. Has tremendous makeup speed, and he does a great job of just reading the play. There's this one play, it was the very first play of the game, where there's a screen coming his way and he just absolutely obliterates the running back. It's just that instinct that he plays with that I really like about Devin Witherspoon, and it doesn't seem like his size is ever going to be an issue. Hopefully it's not, because I really like him as a prospect in this year's draft. Now, for the New York Giants here, sitting at number 22 overall, this is a player that has kind of fallen on my board in terms of my mock draft, I guess you could say. But we're going to take Jordan Addison here. This is a guy who won the Biletnikoff Award when he was playing with Kenny Pickett last year at Pittsburgh. And he had a fairly productive season again at USC. But Jordan Addison, I'm just not very high on him as a prospect. I do think he's going to go in the first round, but he's a very small guy, and I just feel like he's very limited in what he can do. But I do think it's a good fit in the New York Giants offense, because they don't pass the ball a ton. They just need like a playmaker there at wide receiver. I mean, you have a couple of guys sprinkled here and there, but they all only do so much. So I think Jordan Addison playing that under game, making Daniel Jones throw these short, mid-range routes, and just letting him run with the football after. That's exactly what Jordan Addison does. I think this is a great fit here for the New York Giants. So I think that this is a good pairing here between Addison and the Giants. Now, for the Baltimore Ravens, what we're going to do here, I believe I remembered this. No, I didn't. Okay, it's not Felix Anudike-Uzomah. It is Isaiah Foskey, and I remember now, because taking a look at the way that their defensive line is built, they really like to get big players. It doesn't matter if it's on the interior or the outside. They just like to get bigger players on the defensive line, and I don't blame them for that. They want to just be physical at the defensive line and set the tone that way on their defense. Isaiah Foskey is a big dude at 260 pounds. He's also around 6'4", 6'5", so fairly similar build. He just has a little bit more weight than a guy that we talked about before in Jared Verse, who went to the Seahawks, but this is a team that needs some edge rusher help. I don't think this is a reach at all, despite us having to scroll a little bit on the big board. Isaiah Foskey, I think, is one of the more athletic defensive linemen in this year's draft, and considering how much size he has as well, I mean, this is a guy who I mean, I'm really excited to see what he becomes because he's a very physical football player, and you have a guy running down the sideline. I mean, he could catch up to that player and make the tackle. So it's a guy who plays with a high motor, does not give up on a play. That's the things that I like most about Isaiah Foskey, but I think that this is another good match in terms of the scheme, in terms of what kind of player they're looking for at the position. I just think that this makes too much sense. Now, this is the player that I'm going to scroll the furthest down for on this big board. I can't believe how disrespected this prospect is in this draft in terms of the big board here for PFF. But what we're going to do here is take Zay Flowers for the Los Angeles Chargers here at 24. I don't know why this dude is so low, but phenomenal route runner, very agile. He's very precise with what he does. He doesn't hesitate a ton. He just goes out there and makes plays. And this is a guy standing at about 5'10", right? He's a deep threat. I mean, he really is. He has just incredible speed, incredible acceleration. I don't know why they're so low on Zay Flowers. I definitely think he'll be a first rounder, definitely a difference maker. And the one thing right now that the Los Angeles Chargers need on their offense is a guy who can be that deep threat and just get separation from the rest of the defense. Because right now you have Keenan Allen, who isn't getting as much separation as he has in the past just because he's getting a little bit older. I'm not saying he's a bad wide receiver now. I just think that the age is catching up to him a little bit. You have Mike Williams, who doesn't get a ton of separation, but what he's good at is making the contested catch, the 50-50 ball, right? But you need that guy to just allow Justin Herbert to make an easy throw because he has, 3, maybe even 5 yards of separation. Zay Jones, very versatile, can play on the outside and the inside. I really like him as a prospect. I think he's being very disrespected right now by PFF. So, PFF, if by any miracle you are watching this, please move him up on the draft board because he needs more attention. This player is way too good to be that low in the draft. So, for Justin Herbert, I think this would be tremendous, and I think for the future of that wide receiver room, which is slowly aging with Keenan Allen, I think that this would be a good refresher for them. Now, for the Dallas Cowboys here, I believe I remember this pick correctly. Yep, I did. We're going to go with a cornerback here because aside from Trevon Diggs, that room is pretty bad. Although I will say Deron Bland is pretty good for a slot cornerback, but we're going to go with Joey Porter here out of Penn State. Look, like I mentioned, this is a team that doesn't have a second reliable corner on the outside aside from Trevon Diggs. So bringing a guy like Joey Porter, he has a lot of pass defenses this year. Not super high on him. I understand that he's a fairly athletic guy who also has a lot of size. And look, that's another common theme in this year's NFL draft. These are very big and physical corners this year that are going to be able to play man-to-man coverage. That's what people like about Joey Porter, but I just feel like he was a little too inconsistent, right? You have to have the athleticism for one, and you need to have the production to be a first rounder. I think he's going to go in the late first round because his production wasn't always consistent. His highs are really high where he makes a lot of good pass breakups, but then you also have times where he just gets lost in a route and he's 5 to 7 yards off of the receiver. It looks like he's playing very soft coverage at time when he's really not. So I think in terms of that, he needs to shore things up in that department of his game. But I think he's a guy who's talented enough to go in the first round. Just as I said, a little too inconsistent play from Joey Porter, at least from what I've seen. Now, for the Cincinnati Bengals here, we're going to go with the safety position, and we're going to go with Antonio Johnson. Now, if you guys are Brian Branch fans, spoiler alert, I'm not going to have him go in the first round. I just don't know what team would use him for the role that he currently plays at Alabama. Obviously, you don't have to keep him playing that role, but I just think he has such a unique responsibility on that defense for Alabama, so I'm just not really sure where I want to place him yet. Again, still very early in the mock draft process, but I'm just not very confident at selecting him anywhere yet in the first round. But we're going to go with Antonio Johnson here, a guy who I feel safe with taking here in the first round. A very, very hard-hitting safety. I mean, this dude is going to just light up somebody on the other side. I mean, he is going to just, I don't know. It's just very physical, hard-hitting safety. And considering that Jesse Bates probably not going to return, Von Bell is also a pending free agent, I think they're going to look for a safety, and this guy is going to be there at 26 overall, and I think they'll snag him here. But I don't even know what to say, man. I mean, this dude, when he is going and he's going to go and target someone, he's going to lay a hit on them. That's for certain. So I really like Antonio Johnson. Will he be the first safety taken off the board? It's possible. Maybe Brian Branch goes before because of his versatility, but Antonio Johnson can cover a lot of ground. He can lay a hit on a player. I am just very amused by how hard that he hits other players on the opposing team. Okay, now for my Minnesota Vikings here, I'm going to go ahead and take a corner. Now, some Vikings fans, I don't know if you guys are like me, but then it's like, oh, we have Pat Pete, who are most likely going to resign because he had himself a pretty solid season. You have Cam Dantzler, who is still a cheap contract that could find himself in the starting role again at the start of next season. You have Andrew Booth, who you invested a second-round pick in last year, and he's just been hurt all year. Caleb Evans looks really promising, but he can't really stay on the field. Just keeps getting concussions. Duke Shelley's playing really well. And so it's just like, do you really want to take another cornerback? Just because there is so much potential currently in that room. However, I do feel like Shannon Sullivan, the slot cornerback on this team, has been a huge liability time after time in the big moments here for this team. And I think Clark Phillips can shore up that spot. I don't think it's very often where coming out of the draft there is going to be a player as highly sought out at the position of slot cornerback as Clark Phillips is this year. And look, we can talk about size all you want, right? But I mean, Duke Shelley's a good example. This is a guy standing at like 5'9", 5'10", and he's keeping up with all the wide receivers and any challenge thrown at him. Clark Phillips is a similar size where he's around 5'10", so there's questions about his height, which is why he'll fall in the draft. But very, very productive player, and when teams want to test him, he answers. And he answers with big-time plays, has come up with multiple interceptions throughout his career, and just a very proficient player, whether you play him in the slot or on the outside. So I think if the Vikings can get him here at 27, he's going to be a very versatile player for this defense, and you can play him wherever you want. But you can get him on the field for sure, despite all the depth that there currently is at that position there for the Minnesota Vikings. So, whether you think there's a lot of depth at the position or not, I think this works out either way for the Minnesota Vikings. Here for the Denver Broncos, I'm pretty positive. Okay, yeah. So we're going to take Nolan Smith here. So Nolan Smith is a guy who has taken a significant drop here in my mock draft from where I think a lot of people think he might go, but I don't think that they're too huge on like bringing in like super big defensive linemen. And that's one concern I have with Nolan Smith, amongst the fact that he hasn't really played this year because of an injury, but he's also at 230 pounds, which is fairly small for a defensive lineman. Now, this is a very, very nifty and speedy guy coming off the edge. So, if the Denver Broncos don't trade for Sean Payton, which is what the rumors are right now, they would be trading this first-round pick away. I think they'll stick and pick with the edge rusher here out of Georgia, a guy who's going to fall in the draft because of his injury, but super athletic guy. That's what you're banking on, is his athleticism. Nolan Smith out of Georgia here goes number 28 overall to the Denver Broncos. They got that pick from the San Francisco 49ers. Now, for the Buffalo Bills here, okay, despite trading for Nyheim Hines at the trade deadline, despite drafting James Cook in the second round last year, despite having Devin Singletary on this team, they're still looking for that running back. Like, they need that dude at running back. You know who we're going to go with right here? Bijan Robinson out of Texas. I just think this makes too much sense, okay? This is a team, this is overall the best team on paper. And what better way to make this offense than get a legit running game out of your running back? Like, Josh Allen is their best runner, and he's a quarterback. If they can have a efficient running back for the next 4 years, my God, they legitimately then might be impossible to stop. But Bijan Robinson is a big-time playmaker there at Texas. He's a very patient runner, a very physical guy who's very hard to take down. He doesn't blow you away with his speed when you watch him on TV, but the dude makes plays and he outruns everyone, So Bijan Robinson, I think, is that sure running back that they've been looking for a long time. I don't think that they can miss out on a prospect like this. I'd be ecstatic if I was a Bills fan if I got Bijan Robinson. It just makes too much sense. Now, here for the Kansas City Chiefs, they, along with so many other teams in the league, are in desperate need of a tackle, right? You have Andrew Wiley currently playing at your right tackle position, which is less than ideal. I believe he's given up close to 7 sacks this year, if I'm not mistaken, which is not very good. You want to keep Patrick Mahomes healthy and upright. You also have Orlando Brown on the other side, who hasn't played very well himself, but he's going to be there because of his massive contract. But what we're going to do out here is get a real tackle in the building. We're going to take Anton Harrison here out of Oklahoma. Now, taking a look at this offensive tackle position too, there are so many options here, right? I mean, look at all these guys right here. I mean, so many of these guys. I think we will see up to Darnell Wright, and I think Darnell Wright should also be much, much higher on this draft board. He is also another player completely disrespected who I think could be taken in the first round. But Anton Harrison is going to just shore up that tackle position and hopefully keep Patrick Mahomes upright. You got to keep the $500 million man healthy and keep his jersey clean. This will definitely help him here. And with our final pick, yes, pick 31 is the final pick in this year's draft because, just in case you missed it, the Miami Dolphins had their pick forfeited because of their illegal tampering over the offseason this year, trying to get Tom Brady to join their team. But right here, we're going to finish up this mock draft here with the Philadelphia Eagles, projected, at least right now, because of record and seeding, to win the Super Bowl, with Felix Anudike-Uzomah. They are currently looking for another guy at the edge rusher position to rotate with Robert Quinn, Derek Barnett, Josh Sweat. My goodness, there's so many names on this defensive line, and the room is only going to get deeper with more depth, and they have the ability to do this because of their 2 first-round picks. We're going to go ahead and take Felix Anudike-Uzomah, and the one thing that I really like about Felix Anudike-Uzomah, oh my goodness, is that he's a very physical football player, and I love to just build these teams with physical football players because the physical teams typically win the games, and this is a guy who is constantly double-teamed on that Kansas State defensive line because there isn't many other guys to pay attention to on that line. But he is definitely a disruptor. I mean, teams have literally tried to double-team him, and they still can't stop him. It's amazing. So I really like Felix Anudike-Uzomah, just, again, a very physical player, a guy who plays with a ton of heart. But that is going to conclude our full first-round mock draft here. I'll scroll down for the other picks in a little bit, but this is the recap of it right here. I don't know if I want to talk about any players in specific here. I mean, I'll take a look. Like I said, right, Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, and then Will Anderson and Jalen Carter. Those guys can be interchangeable. Really doesn't matter to me. I mean, it's that close in terms of the comparison to those prospects. Look, guys, I really wouldn't be surprised if Cam Smith goes this high in the draft. Like, I think teams are slowly going to buy into his game just a little bit more. I think there's a lot to like in terms of the tape for him. Taking a look. What else? Jackson Smith-Njigba. There is a real possibility that he could be a lot lower in the draft, but I really like him as a prospect. I don't care that he was hurt all last year. I mean, yeah, I just feel like this is one of these, like, you can't miss prospects, and we can't make the mistake of passing on him like so many teams did with Justin Jefferson so many years ago just because they felt like he could only play in the slot. Again, like so many of the other players that we mentioned, Peter Skoronski, Paris Johnson, these two can also be interchangeable here. We had one tight end go in the first round, and Michael Mayer. Jordan Addison falls to 22. Devin Witherspoon sneaks himself into the top 25 of this year's draft. Zay Jones, completely disrespected by the PFF big board. And then Bijan Robinson finds his way into the first round, and we close it off with Felix Anudike-Uzomah. If you guys like this full first round mock draft, consider subscribing. Took a lot of time to make this draft. Hopefully you guys like the player that I picked for your team. Hopefully it makes sense. But until then, it's draft season. We'll see you guys all later. Peace.